Yeah, she said she talked to me because I had told her. She's like, I've already so
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the final keynote speaker of this conference. He's the founder of the Collateral Damage Project. Let's welcome Mr. Scott Chisholm.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you to everybody part of the conference for inviting me here today. This is an incredible day. When I was first invited to come to speak at the conference, and recognizing that it was nursing students from across the country, the impact that all of you in this room have on what goes on in nursing in the future is just absolutely incredible. It floors me. One of the things I said to Alicia when she phoned me to talk to me about speaking here, I said, I'll come and talk. But if I come and just talk and nothing changes, we've done nothing. And that's nothing less than blowing hot air. And especially when we talk about mental health, we've seen a lot of talk. It's taken years and years to get talking. We're talking about, this is really about doing. What can we do? And that's very much what I want to talk about today. So in getting ready for this, I looked at the Canadian Nursing Students Association website to say, okay, what do you do? And one of the things I looked at was your objectives. There's 3 of them. The second one got my attention very, very much. It reads, if you don't know this already, influence and advance innovation in nursing curriculum and research. So, the association that you're a part of can influence curriculum and research. A couple days ago I posted, do a lot of social media. Facebook is an amazing tool, so if you get messages like this out. So I posted that I was coming here to speak today. One of the responses was this. It was from a woman by the name of Christine. She says, this is an important step. So glad to hear you are doing this. You are certainly filling in the cracks so many have fallen through. In the last few years since I started this, it's incredible how many times I've heard the phrase, falling through the cracks. And I think her response was exactly it. What this is about today is that we have the opportunity, you have the opportunity to begin to fill in those cracks, because it's what you can do. Today, I'm going to be talking about suicide a lot. The project is based on suicide. The training that I talk about today will be based on suicide. But the reality of what we're talking about is not about suicide. It's about the issues that lead up to it. That's what we're truly talking about. But in order to deal with those, we have to deal with suicide face on. I really, truly believe it. This picture I chose to start with today because it is a picture of a nurse. This is the Roberts Foundation from St. Catharines, Ontario. Soon after I launched the project, in 2009, I got a call from the Roberts family who lost their daughter Kaylee to suicide. She was 31 years old, 2 young children, she's a teacher. Beautiful, beautiful teacher. They wanted to be a part of the book, part of the project. Louise is a public health nurse. So I went to St. Catharines to photograph the family, and they were amazing. One of the things that they were concerned about is that they would forget about Callie, and they wanted to find ways to remember her. Which ironically, when you look at the image, the tattoos, they were there, and that's what made the image. What was incredible when I left their home that night, and I had been doing the project for 6 months, as I left their house, the hair went up on the back of my neck. Because I realized that I just walked out of my own home. Here's a family who studied together, they went camping together, they did everything together that we'd expect families to do together. They're loving, caring, as grandchildren. It was amazing, and it was my family. But what shocked me the most is that, and we'll learn soon that, even after I lost my father to suicide, started on this project. But I realized as I left that house, that why did I not believe that suicide could happen to my 2 sons, Curtis and Kyle? I really realized, and the realization there, what struck me is that that's what it was. This was my family, not somebody else's. Not the ones down the street, not in the other school, not in the other hospital, where it was my family. So it was very, very personal. When Louise returned to work, I warned her, public health minister, remember, I said, Louise, people have a hard time talking about suicide. It's going to be difficult for you, but it's going to be really difficult for the people you work with, who are all nurses. She phoned me 2 hours into her first day back to work. She said, Scott, they're doing what they said you would. Or they're doing what you said they would. I said, what's that? She said, they're avoiding me. And it's all nurses. And they're avoiding because they had no tools. This photograph is from a woman from Halifax. Her name's Carol. She, you may have read about her in the exhibit that's there. An incredible woman. Lost her son Adam to suicide at 19 years old. She too is a nurse. Carol was instrumental, probably the reason why the barriers are now on the McDonald Bridge that is out on the waterfront. Amazing that she not only struggles to deal with the loss of her son to suicide, she needed to find a way to do something about it. And the barriers are a big, big step. Again, another nurse. When I asked Carol the first time that I met her, I said, what training did you have in nursing when you graduated? And that was probably, I'm not going to date her, but it was a while ago. She said, nothing. My wife's a nurse today. Curriculum's nothing. I know at Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, where I'm from, when I asked a question to faculty, they struggled to find it in first year of normal psych, as many here might be aware of. So as I said, social media for the project, and I want to give you these ahead of time and you can find them. Left Behind by Suicide.org. I did post a blog entry about my talk today. Please go to it. I want your comments. I need your comments. Your input is what this is all about, getting people talking. Twitter at Suicide Talk, and of course Facebook. Find me there. Send me an email. Like I said about the comment. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about my story. What got me to this stage today, why I'm here talking with you. I'm going to give you an overview of what's called the Collateral Damage Project. Again, what got me here today, and what all the images are all about. I think most importantly today is I want to talk to you about curriculum-based training tools in suicide prevention for nurses that I believe so strongly should be there. There's a number of, I believe there's 2 Safe Talk classes through this conference that were set up because of it, and they were full. That's what I want to talk about, and hopefully we'll have time for questions. So I'm going to move into this slide. No matter how many times I show it, no matter where I show it, it's hard. This is my dad. I was 17, living in a small town in Northern Ontario when he died by suicide. He was an incredible man. He was kind. He was my hero. The project and the work that I do, oddly enough, is not about him. It's about us and how we move forward. I often find when we talk about suicide, we get lost in the grief. We don't change, we don't move forward. We need to so badly, but we get lost in that, and it's easy to. My goal is to move beyond that and do something and help people and prevent suicide in ways that we can. And I truly, truly believe we can prevent suicide when we put some great tools in place. So my story of 17 years old, grade 12, there's 5 kids in our family, 11 to 21 years old. Small town in northern Ontario. If you look at where Lake Superior is, found in most northerly tip, and that's Marathon, town of 2,500 people. My father suffered from depression. He was an alcoholic, and he had nowhere to go. Interestingly, my father was in and out of hospital 6 times. Everybody around him knew that he had severe thoughts of suicide, but nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody at all. So that's who I am. That's got me to where I am today. The Collateral Damage Project. I'm going to show you a short introduction video now that we produced when we launched the project in 2009, and then I'll get talking a bit more about it. On February 25th, 1982, my father died by suicide. Although I never hid the fact that he took his own life, I was often left to deal with my pain in loneliness, social stigma, and solitude. I felt so alone with it. I wasn't able to talk about it. Throughout my career as a paramedic and a firefighter, I often found myself, when I did suicide calls, watching family members go through the same thing I did, and going through the same pattern made me want to say to them, I so understand what you're going through. As I watched them grieving and demolished in their kitchens and living rooms, I wanted to hold them and tell them that I really knew how they feel. It's my hope with the Collateral Damage Project that somehow we can create a dialogue that really helps lessen the social stigma that surrounds suicide. The idea of putting a face to those who have lost their loved ones to suicide has been with me for over 10 years. I passionately believe that by stepping out of the dark and showing that I'm a suicide survivor, we'll begin to help those who face a similar life-changing experience today. Imagine what a book of people coming together who've lost a loved one to suicide, what that'll do to help the healing and lessen some of the stigma that we continue to battle with every day. It was like a few weeks ago, one of the guys that I work with, I knew that he had lost his brother to suicide many years ago, and I wanted to talk to him about the project before he went public and heard it on the radio or on the news or anywhere else. I really needed to talk to him about it. So I mentioned to him the title of the project at shift change one night. And we left it at that. It was kind of awkward, so we left it at that. But the next morning when he came into work again, he sort of pulled me aside, and I could tell he wanted to talk about it. And about 15 minutes later, after a really, really good conversation, he ended it by saying, you know what? I've never talked to anybody this long about my brother. And it's been over 30 years for him. If you've lost a loved one to suicide, I invite you to come forward to be photographed and share your story with Collateral Damage. Join us as we begin the dialogue. So where did the idea come from? I get asked that question a lot, and being from Thunder Bay, a smaller town, 100,000 people, I do a lot in our community, fundraising-wise. I've done a lot with poverty and homelessness, for cancer fundraising, as a firefighter and an athlete. People just know me. But I've never hid the fact that my father died by suicide. For some reason inside of me, that was never a problem for me. For my siblings, for other people, it is. And I don't know why. I still don't know why I could, but I did. But people would often say to me, Scott, I wouldn't picture you died of suicide. Not just once, but it was over and over. And as a photographer, I thought, yeah, where are the pictures? And so I went looking, and all I could find was cold text, stacks of text. Not a lot of who is suicide, what is suicide. And so I thought, we got to put a face to it, just like I said in the video. I want to show my face. This is who I am. Because even as people talk to me, they learn. So that's where the idea came from. is where did, that picture of suicide, who would ever imagine that the photograph you see in front of you is a picture of suicide? It's me and my two sons. My wife on the other side of the camera for the first time. But that's what it is. When my father died by suicide, I immediately became 5 to 8 times greater risk. That's what the research shows. And so did my sons. So it doesn't go away. That's an important part. So we need to, my kids have, through time, just like my wife, has had to learn how to live with this, how to move forward with it, how to understand it. So the idea for the images came from that. It was going to be a local and regional book. I live in a part of the country with a lot of First Nations communities. We have one of the highest suicide rates in the world, actually, with Kanchikum in our region. So I knew I could fill the book within our region. I was going to do an Apple book, whoever wanted it to get it. That's what it was going to be. Really. A couple people laughed and said I had no idea what I was getting into. They were right. So some have asked a question. I was in a meeting a couple months ago and somebody said, well, I've done a lot of work in breast cancer and the stats are here. And she was able to really tell me all the stats. And I've never been one, when it comes to suicide, to always go back to stats. And the reason I have, and I got a call last year from local media, and it was last January actually. And they said to me, Scott, we heard that there was 5 suicides last week in February. And being in the field that I am in, I knew that they were wrong, because there were 7, but I didn't say anything. So they wanted to talk. They wanted to do something in media. They felt a big need to do something. So I said, okay. And when I met with the journalist, I said, would you have called me if there's 4? What 3? What 2? What number do we need to do something about this? So then last week, a couple weeks ago, when somebody asked me about stats, I went to look at them. And here they are in front of you. The breast cancer stats, those are from 2012, and this is from the Canadian Cancer Society. 19 per 100,000. Prostate cancer is 19 per 100,000. Suicide for men is 17.9 per 100,000. Suicide affects men at a far greater rate. So all the men in this room, we gotta get talking. It's always amazing when I go to talk at conferences, it's predominantly women helping men deal with suicide, depression, and all those issues that lead up to it. But the male stats are very, very high. The stat that floors me the most, and it's probably more comparable when we look at prostate and breast cancer, is the suicide men between 40 and 59 years old. 27 per 100,000. The Canadian rate is 11.5, which makes it, and the First Nation youth rate is 5 to 7 times that. The Inuit youth rate is 11 times that. And the only reason why I have this slide is I need everybody to understand that this is a real issue that we need to do something about. Now we can do something about it, which we'll learn to talk about. But for some reason, we human beings need numbers, and there they are. So we have a need, we have to do something about it. So in the Collateral Damage Project, what I wanted to do, when I first launched it, what I wanted to do was create a proactive dialogue on suicide to get rid of the stigma through the images. The images and stories, it's a tool to get people talking. It was that word dialogue that I really used, and I didn't understand the power of it then, and I really, really do now. The title of the project, Collateral Damage, came from Alex Bowman, one of Canada's greatest swimmers who lost his brother to suicide a year and a half before he won his 2 gold medals and broke 2 world records at the same time in Los Angeles. Alex came on board right away. We did a launch on CBC Radio Ontario today. In Ontario, it's a fairly significant show. And immediately when we launched the project, it changed everything. Essentially, the 1 hour call-in show was an invitation to talk. That's it. Let people talk. They phoned and said thank you. They told us the stories, but they kept saying thank you for just letting me talk. Thank you for bringing this up. Thank you. And it floored me how many people to this day said thanks for getting this going. And that's what it's about. That invitation to talk got everything going. The response has been overwhelming. Over 800 stories in the last few years, and we've had to control a lot of them beyond. So the project goals, like I said, create that dialogue, to lessen the stigma through the images. Education and training. And this came from one of a question came from one of our advisory team members. Her name is Susan McLucart. She's an amazing Canadian, an amazing singer and songwriter. And she and she grew up in the far north. But she said to me at one point, about a year and a half into the project, she said, Scott, people are listening. People are talking about this all over the country. But what do you want people to do? They're talking about it. What do you want people to do? And as in typical Susan style, she sat there and waited for an answer. And I thought, what did I want? Well, I went back to being 17. What did I want around me? I wanted my teachers to be able to talk about this. I wanted to be able to talk about it. So I said, I want teachers to have tools to know how to talk about it. So I think teachers should have tools. I said, that's what I said. So that's what I said. She said, okay, then what? And in typical Susan fashion, she waited for the answer. I said, and then I thought, what did I want around my dad? I wanted people around my dad to have tools. Again, I go back to the discharge rate 6 times. Nurses, doctors, staff at hospitals, I want them to have tools. Friends around my dad, they took guns away from my dad. But didn't talk about suicide. People need tools. We put tools in the workplace. So education and training. And we want to be a place where we can provide dialogue and conversation and provide facts and where people can go to learn more about what to do after we lose someone to suicide. Or you've got a friend who lost mom or dad or brother to suicide. How do I talk to them? We want to create those tools. So it went on and on. I've been speaking at conferences. We have a lot of media. The exhibit that you see in the which room is over in the casino was part of an interim exhibit that I presented in Dartmouth across the bay for the Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention Conference. What was intended to be there for 3 days stayed in its place for 5 weeks and has continually traveled around Nova Scotia with a waiting list ever since, and that was 2010. That exhibit's there because we call it the interim exhibit, because I thought we'd done this project by now. And the organizers of that conference wanted the exhibit. What it has stood as is the example of what the work that we do can reach. And people have asked me about the national exhibit and when it will be done. And what we focused on now is what we need to look at now. Is what we want for the book is to show the scope of suicide in Canada geographically and within relationships. So we go to every province and territory. So when you see the exhibit, that you'll see here it's predominantly white middle class. It's not indicative of what suicide is in Canada. But it was only meant for 3 days, and that's why I call it the interim exhibit. We've got an advisory team that continues to grow. People just want to come on board to do something about it. And in 2012, last year, I was awarded recognized as a champion of mental health by the Canadian Alliance of Mental Health and Mental Illness. That one was a pretty significant award. Not that I certainly don't need awards, I just want to get this out. But what it does, it recognized the need for the conversation of suicide and what could be done with it. And it really has. When we look at partnering with, whether it's other organizations or building our bridges across the country, it's really helped a lot. We recently spent some time in Miramichi, Eelground, and Burn Church. And that was an amazing time. I'm just going to make sure I'm on the right side here. An amazing time because we got to talk with at a community level, do safe talk workshops, and with youth. And it's the same dialogue. And there's a number of pictures coming up that I'll show you from there. So what do I want people to do? The tools. Tools around me, tools around my dad. Those tools around my dad is what I'm going to start talking about. Safe Talk. You've heard about Safe Talk this week a little bit. It was offered 2 workshops. Safe Talk is a very, very simple thing. It's like CPR. That's all it is. It's being able to recognize somebody with thoughts of suicide and linking them with help. It's nothing more than that. It's not, you're not the one taking care of them. You're just keeping them safe and getting them help. The biggest thing about Safe Talk, it gets you to ask the question. Are you thinking about suicide? Do you have thoughts of suicide? And not being afraid of it. We need to talk about suicide to be able to do something about it. Talking about suicide won't cause it. One of the biggest myths. I'm going to put it in their head. We've got a motto with the project. Well, not talking about it isn't working. We've got to talk about it. And the research shows, the evidence shows that talking about it won't put the idea in their head. So Safe Talk, 3-hour workshop. 3 hours. It's about telling. So if I have thoughts of suicide, I'm going to tell somebody. Asking about suicide, somebody with thoughts of suicide. Listen, keep safe. Keep safe. Are you thinking about suicide? Is the biggest thing that you will learn from that. I believe passionately that every nursing curriculum across this country, this ought to be in the first year. I want you, when you go back, if you believe anything I say, when you go back to your school, I want you to tell the faculty, we want this. Not just that we want it, we need it. When you look at what's going on campuses across the country, the challenges that all of you in this room have as emerging adults, let's put these tools in place in curriculum, not as something a bonus or something I might do on Thursday nights because it's taught mental health, but because it's mandated in my curriculum. And I believe the same thing for education. I believe the same thing for business majors. And you're thinking, why business majors? What do they have to do with mental health? Well, business majors become the HR professionals who run companies. Business majors make the differences when it comes to how health and safety is talked about. Business majors make the decisions on how workplace tools are put in place, like first aid, CPR. I also say lawyers need this. You may have all heard about the National Strategy for Suicide Prevention that was finally adopted in Canada. It was amazing work, and it's a good thing to have. There's a lot of good talk, and I want to see action, and it's good. It's a good starting point. About a year and a half ago, I was contacted on a Sunday morning by the advisors for Bob Rae, because on the following Tuesday, he was going to make a motion supporting a national strategy. So all three parties were going at this, as did Megan Leslie from Halifax region. So his advisors had phoned me, and it was Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. They got a hold of me through the Royal Ottawa, and they said, they asked for my input on helping create this motion. So one of my first questions to him, I asked, how many people are working on this? He said, oh, about 25. What's their backgrounds? Lawyers, and political science majors. I said, do me a favor, take a poll and find out who of the advisors have ever been trained in suicide in any academic fashion. He says, okay, that's a great question. So he phoned me back about 20 minutes later, very sheepishly, and said, none. I said, so let me get this straight. We're working on a motion that has potential on the legislation in Canada, and all we're using is the tools that our parents gave us. He says, that's why we need to do this. And that's what it is. So who needs training? Everybody does. It's very obvious with nurses, and we're going to focus on that today. We can really get going. Living Works, so you're saying, how do I get Safe Talking curriculum? Living Works is a company, it's kind of like American Heart is to CPR. Living Works is based out of Calgary. They're about 25 years old. They've got a number of different programs. I focus on Safe Talk because I know it's difficult for anybody to say no. It's 3 hours. Many of you may have heard about Assist, a 2-day workshop. I think it's fantastic. You probably should have it, but it's going to be harder to sell. I think once you take Safe Talk, then Assist becomes very real. Heather is waiting for your phone calls. If you need any help, want letters, how to put it in, how to bring it forward, if not her help, she's willing to do that with you. It's there, and it's also on my blog that I put up as well. So if you go to the website, all of that information will be there. Just ask her, how do I do this? So one of the things after we launched the project, it was, we wanted to create this dialogue. And people would ask me, Scott, do you think this is going to prevent suicide? And I said at the time, you know what? This wasn't about prevention. Because what did I know? I was just a 17-year-old. I just wanted to get people talking about it. The reality was, once we got people talking about it, it worked. A couple days after we launched, there's an article in the Chronicle Journal in Thunder Bay, a local newspaper, and it was across the papers across the country. But I got this phone call, and I have a separate line in the house for the project. And normally I let it go to voicemail, but for some reason I answered it. And it went like this. Hi, Scott. My name's Charlie, and I was going to kill myself this weekend. But I had no idea what I was going to do to my 4 teenage daughters. I thought they'd be better off without me. I really thought I was a burden. But I had no idea what I was going to do to them until I read about your 11-year-old sister. And so we had this conversation, and it was that plain. He was that comfortable. We talked about, is he getting care, is he getting help? That was my prime concern. It was one of those phone calls that made me go take Safe Talk, because I hadn't done it yet. But we talked to him about him getting care, and he did. And at one point, the conversation was so good that I said to him, would you mind me blogging about this or writing about this? This is incredibly powerful, and I think it will help many others. He says, no, I don't mind, as long as we can identify who I am and who my daughters are. I said, that's no problem. I said, would you mind sending me an email? He said, I wouldn't mind at all, but I don't use a computer and my wife doesn't know about this. And I was just, I could hear my dad's voice. But going back to the word dialogue, because we started the project, because it got media, he was able to read a story, dialogue, and see what would happen next week. All he wanted to do was be a good dad. That's what he wanted. And he thought they'd be better off without him. But he knows differently because we talked about suicide. Changed everything. And the stories that come all the time. The picture that you see here is from one of my posts. I was in Punta Cana with my family, and they wouldn't let me leave my phone on. And it was one day they went out to do something, and my youngest son said, okay, you can turn your phone on today while we're gone, but it's going to be off when we get back. So I started getting a text from actually a colleague of mine in Thunder Bay, and one of his texts read, I came dangerously close to packing it in today, but there's no damn way my kids are going to be in your book. After going back and forth with text, he ended up going to Emerge. He thought it would be for a few hours, and he was admitted for 8 weeks with severe depression. Again, I'm not going to say he's alive because we talked about it, but he was a middle-aged man who probably would not have talked about it otherwise. I don't know what would have happened. So it really does work, just talking about it.